Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, it's afternoon.
And that was the first time Bill has ever opened the show, and hopefully there's more to come
I
on
didn't
Reach
even know
Out.
what time of day it was.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful day. It's cold.
Oh, this isn't nice.
It's cold.
This isn't really cold.
Yeah,
This is chilly.
it's true. For winter in central Pennsylvania, it's pretty moderate.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Actually, back in the day, we would say we're in the middle of an Indian summer. You remember that term?
Yeah.
Or the January thaw.
Yeah, I saw a list of seasons that someone posted on Facebook the other day, and there are about 12 different seasons for central
Right
Pennsylvania.
on.
And yeah, although, of course, with, and I don't like the term climate change because it really puts that soft image on it, much like I don't like the term domestic violence. It
Mhm.
seems to make it less than it is. Climate change seems like, oh, climate just changes. So we call it climate instability or climate chaos or climate destabilization. Yeah, that's a term I was thinking of the other
Climate
day.
destabilization.
Climate destabilization. I
Yeah,
think
well,
that's
that
how I'll
depends on
refer.
what you would call the standard. But, I kind of like the way it has been over the last million and a half years or so.
Or at least the last 12,000.
Yeah. Well, ever since the last those guys got off the earth and the mammals started to become the earth's dominant creature, it was because of the environment that the earth had come to, and that basically has continued in a very, very moderating form to some of the environments that we have had on the earth in the past, and it sustains us. So when we say the climate changes, it's been a lot of different things, and it could change to become another thing, and that will not be unusual for the climate, but it will not allow us to continue to live, ladies and gentlemen.
And it just so happens, or it was by design, however, you might be thinking, that we are in that perfect spot of habitation for our species.
Yeah.
Either, we had just came into this spot, by chance or by luck or by design. Doesn't really at this point matter, how, except to the person itself. But we are in
Well,
our perfect spot right now, and yet we are determined to mess with it. We're determined to put our stamp on it. Unfortunately, our stamp is one of death and
don't worry,
destruction.
we're gone. I mean, it's not even a question anymore. All right. I mean, I'm sorry to say this, and I'm particularly sorry for my great grandchildren.
I'm
You
particularly
know,
sorry that it's the case. I think we have to say it, but I'm just sorry it's true because it is true.
it's look, it's too urgent that we should be having this discussion right now. We should be in the middle of talking about how we are going about making this magnificent change to combat global warming.
And I was listening to a podcast the other day on this climate destabilization where the woman, she wrote a book. I haven't actually finished the episode, but she was starting to say that we, instead of just portraying this as apocalyptic and hopeless and gloom and doom, which it is, it's a very serious situation. Instead, like we have to be instead envisioning these new ways in which we can live and just transform our circumstances. To
Wrong.
put yes,
Well, we look. There are times, places that we cannot live. We can't go to Venus and live. You know, we can only live in certain environments. I mean, that's all there is to it.
interesting thing about Venus, they apparently, or Venus, the planet, suffered from the runaway greenhouse
That's
effect.
what. Yeah.
And admittedly, like that's something that took quite a while after it got going, but once it started going, there was seemingly no way to stop it.
Right.
But I mean, that's the effect of thousands or millions of years
Yeah.
after this started.
Right.
But like that planet is so hot. I believe it's even hotter than Mercury,
Right. Well, how
from
can
my
you? It
understanding.
is. It's the hottest planet. It's higher than Mercury, and Mercury is closer to the sun.
So there are
That's an absolute fact. I mean,
there are obviously other factors at work just than proximity to the sun.
right, exactly, sure. And one of them is the greenhouse effect. But my point being that there is no technology that man is capable of that we could sustain the kind of changes that we're looking at. I mean, that could take us. Let's say we can moderate our circumstances through technology for a number of years. Okay, fine, big deal. So you got another 100 years. you know,
Or even another
or,
thousand.
man, I doubt that very
But
seriously. Come
let's
on
say
now.
it's 1,000.
Let's
Even that's not enough.
But but look at it. Look at it for real. What's happening here right now? We're talking like 2030, whether or not we will have fish, still.
And I honestly
You know,
think 2030 is a
okay.
hopeful
And
estimate.
we're talking 2050, where there's so much plastic in the ocean you could practically walk across it. So you're not going to have fish.
And we're not talking miracle walking across water. We're talking about plastified walking across
Okay,
water.
now that's the reality. We're making a billion plastic bottles today.
Mhm.
You know, we didn't stop. We're going to make another billion tomorrow. We're not stopping. you know, so what I'm saying is that where we are going is guaranteed, and where we're going, technology is useless.
We just truly have to transform our entire way of life and
And
how we do things, and especially how much energy, especially as Americans, that we consume, and just how much waste that we produce.
we're not going to do it. It's got to be done now. You know, if we were talking 40 years ago, we could have this conversation. And we did have this conversation 40 years ago. I can remember this almost exact conversation, actually, over playing ping pong at Strawberry Mansion Junior High School.
Oh, I remember
You know,
when I was in elementary school, and well, it was '93, so a little bit later than yours, but
uh,
even then, there was a real knowledge of this. Like, this wasn't a secret.
yeah.
People knew that this was in the process of
Mhm.
happening.
You understand, 40 years ago, I was teaching at that school. I wasn't a student.
Really?
We were in the faculty recreation rooms playing ping pong, and I was arguing with other teachers.
Firstly, you had a ping pong table in your faculty recreation room?
Yeah.
God, what kind of fancy school did you go to?
It was the biggest junior high school in the world, Strawberry Mansion Junior High School.
Oh,
And it was very ghettofied.
okay.
But we had this conversation, and I can remember the argument between teachers, etc. You know, that was fine for then. But right then, it was a call to action,
And no one took it.
and nobody took it.
Well, very few.
Yeah,
And not
yeah,
enough.
No. What we started to do was to pretend action. We're going to say, let's everybody recycle your plastic bottles. Like it's our fault.
Exactly. And that's all well and good.
You know,
It's all well and good to do that. I think we all should live in a in a way that is healthy towards the environment, but that's maybe 5%
Justin,
of the total pollution
Justin,
that's created. That
but-
other 95% is government and it's
but,
corporations.
but Justin, the point is we shouldn't make plastic bottles.
Well, yeah, that too.
I mean, it's as simple as that. It's no place of no thing of pointing the finger, putting the burden. We shouldn't be making plastic bottles. You say, hey, this fertilizer is going down there and growing all the algae and killing all the fish. Then you stop using that fertilizer. You
And
don't
you're
argue
talking
about it, talk about it. You know,
Talking about glass bottles or talking about plastic bottles, we have other options. We have
Yeah,
many
right,
other
right.
options. We can make glass bottles, or amazingly, we could just bring our own containers to a tap and fill it.
Oh, my
but
goodness.
that eliminates so much profit. That's the problem.
You know, the way we
profit just-
started. I mean, the
right
way
out
we
the door.
started as human beings,
Could
making our
throw
own clay
clay.
pots and taking them
Yeah.
down to the river.
Yeah, from the very mud that's in the river itself.
Oh, brother. You mean we had it?
Yeah, but it's missing something. It's
Mm.
missing that magic ingredient,
Profit.
profit.
Yeah, well, profit is the bane of us all. Then that's it. You sacrifice your species and the elephant and the pig. By the way, Happy New Year's, and we should take a moment to say that.
It's the year of the pig
It's the year of the pig.
in China.
In China, well, not only in China, and that was one of the points I wanted to make sure that people understood that there's a large section of the world that Chinese calendar is important to. What if you lived in Indonesia? What if you lived in Java? You know,
I did not know they followed the Chinese lunar calendar.
yeah, the whole that whole area of the world
Hmm.
uses the Chinese calendar. They're all celebrating the New Year. We just say Chinese New Year is here as if it's some quaint little thing. But
Firstly, anything having to do with China is neither little nor quaint.
well,
1.2 billion people right now, I think.
yeah,
So
yeah.
even by itself, it is a force.
But we talk about little Christmas and things like that. I mean, things that we don't think pertain to us.
Hmm.
You know, we're not going to count the Chinese people who live in America, but it's going to mean more. It's going to mean more and more Canada and the rest of y'all. And I point out Canada in particular because Canada is messing up with China. China is Canada's second largest trading partner, and because we told them to arrest this CEO, or is she a CFO? We told them to arrest the woman who heads Huawei and keeping her under whatever before they ship her to the United States to isolation and jail. Uh, they're messing up their relationship with China. And China, right now, is the second largest economy in the world, but I'm going to say unequivocally that very soon that won't be the case. They'll
Yeah,
be the largest economy in the world.
well, of course.
And you risk your future by going down the road of the imperialists who is going out of power and not joining up with those who are coming into power.
Yeah, and Canada's also made any other number of very questionable moves in terms of economics and politics.
In America,
And we like
because
to
they follow
paint
our lead.
Justin Trudeau as this great leftist, as this great progressive, but it is simply not the case.
No,
At the best, he is a somewhat of a liberal, but at the worst, he is just a complicit colonizer.
he's a creation, just like Macron. He's a creation of
Very
the
similar.
media and the in people who are manipulating politics, create these Macrons, and they foist them on the people, and they come on the people as if they're going to be one thing, and then the people get to see who they are.
They are institutional creations,
They say, "I see you,
very much along the lines of Obama,
Obama,"
Macron.
and this guy down here in Venezuela, who thinks that he's the president. The one that Pompous calls Guido.
Yes. Hmm.
Uh, he's a creation in America. I mean,
Guaido.
yeah, he's a creation of our that same kind of machine. He's a creation of the IMF and the American ability to manipulate and control and economically weaponize economies so as to destroy and cause insurrection.
And towards the second half of our show, we're going to talk a little bit more about theory. We're going to get into the whole functionality of neoliberalism. In case you're not aware, it's actually really fascinating how it just has been such a boon to capitalism, and it's created these institutions that really take away so much of the sovereignty of the state, that just you have populist rulers who come in who seek to nationalize industries, and then you have these quick reactions from the IMF, from the World Bank, from other countries, of course, as well, but saying, oh, you can't do that. And also from financial institutions around the world who say, no, that's going to reduce the free flow of capital. We'll perhaps allow you to privatize more of your economy. That'll be fine. But beyond that, know your place. See, I don't know, as the duly elected leader of a country, I would have thought the place was to perhaps be able to nationalize these industries. But
They could do what
no,
they want in their own sovereign country.
you would think so.
I do think so. they could do what they want in their own
Yeah.
sovereign country, and it says so right there in the UN Charter, and it says also in the UN Charter that you cannot cause the regime change. You cannot do that in another country, and yet certain people can go to the UN and say, let's take a vote on who's the president of Venezuela. You know,
Yeah,
that's a
but
direct violation of their own rules.
that'll get in the way of bringing freedom.
Yeah, get in a way of bringing
Venezuela has really just started to enjoy freedom. Oh, freedom has arisen. Isn't that what they said in Venezuela this week or last week now?
yeah, right, yeah,
Absolutely.
sure, yeah. Let's go to that. But you have down here the State of the Union.
State of the Union, and just one of the great lines from it. It was, of course, this Tuesday. There is going to be peace and legislation. There cannot be war and investigation. He's got some lines. He's got some good talking points. He's got some catchy slogans.
Well, you know something? I hate to say this. That's one I agree with.
You are a friend of Trump, my friend.
No, I am not a friend
Yeah,
of Trump. I'm a friend of America. Let me say something, and say something very
So
important.
you're saying Trump is America?
No, well, he is. Not only is he American, he's the personification of America.
I'll get you a pin for the next election.
Well, don't get me a pen. You take a look at your country and understand why he is your president. I didn't make him president. This country made him president. This country made him president for some very good reasons. One of them is this crap that we're talking about right here. Legislation, peace.
Mm-hmm.
These two things are two things that we should be working for in our Congress. Our Congress, look at our Constitution. The Constitution doesn't start with the president. The Constitution starts with the Congress. The Congress passes the laws. The president is not a dictator or an imperial president. He has restrictions on both sides of him. He cannot make the laws. He cannot decide what's going to happen with the money. There are things that he cannot do.
And yet we see through executive decree that many of our past presidents have done just that.
But we allow it. When you had Teddy Roosevelt wanting to take a white fleet around the world, the Congress refused to give him the money to do it. The Congress stood up to what he wanted to do.
Just imagine Teddy Roosevelt in the political climate today.
Hey, come on. But this is what I'm saying. The Congress took its position seriously. Even out of this, I like this woman, Omar, Ian Omar.
Mm-hmm.
But in a discussion about the immigration, she was saying for 20 years, the immigration policy in this country has gone nowhere. And because the president hasn't done such and such. And I stop. I say, excuse me? For 20 years in the Congress, you did not sit down and pass a comprehensive immigration bill so that the president cannot do immigration haphazardly or catch as catch can or as he wants to and act in an imperial way.
Yes, of course, but I think it's hand in hand. I think the president can lead. He can't do everything himself.
Lead, but he don't pass the laws. Excuse me. We're talking 20 years that you're supposed to be dealing with immigration, and every year that it came up in the Congress, nobody did anything.
Because fact is, most people, most corporations, most leaders in this country don't want immigration reform.
Well, it's not only that, sir, but look, they don't want immigration reform. I agree with you. But they're not doing their jobs about anything.
They don't want a functioning government.
What are they doing their jobs about? What right now? Do we get action on climate change? As a matter of fact, they're fighting anything being done on climate change. They're going back to an old, non-working, non-functioning, non-doing anything institution that they created to do nothing, instead of even adopting an institution where somebody is coming in with new energy to try to do something. And they're trying to dissuade her. They're trying to make sure that nothing happens.
Oh, that Green New Deal thing.
But then you understand that I'm using this to tell you how this Congress is, not only this Congress, but the last Congress and the one before that and the one before that. Mm-hmm. Harry Truman talked about the do-nothing Congress. They haven't done anything since. I'm saying this. You've had 2 years of investigation into whether or not there's been collusion, and you're still investigating it after $10 million. Mm-hmm. At some point, take your energy, please. Right now, they're passing more bills or looking at whether or not somebody had finances or had a tie with somebody, but and they're doing nothing about immigration. They're doing nothing about any income inequality. They're doing nothing about health care, which is what they ran on. They're doing nothing about the climate, which is destroying us. In other words, all the major issues that are in this country will remain in this country when they get finished with all their little investigations and all their little tit for tat moves and all their little nonsense things that they are playing. Let's run this country.
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah, we've played this game long enough. We've played it now for almost 2 years. And now we're making sure that we're just going to investigate, investigate, investigate for the next 2 years. You know, wonderful. If that's what you want to spend all your time and energy and money on, wonderful. But it's not going to do healthcare anything.
And what a distraction it's going to be. It's going to be these loud broadcast hearings. It's going to be ticker tape. It's going to be live news. Maxine Waters subpoenas this, and then that, and then this and that. AOC comes out and declares this and that and this. Ilhan Omar comes out and says this and that and this. And look, if Trump committed illegal on presidential acts, then that's, I'm not saying that's okay.
No, it's not okay.
But I'm also saying that you gotta do other things too. You gotta reform healthcare. You gotta take charge of a real move to stabilize the climate if we can.
Yeah, in other words, we can play these political games between two parties where we don't allow anybody else to play, between the ins and the outs where we don't allow the outs to have a word to say, between those of us who can what is it that they do? Show you that, what did they say about Nancy Pelosi? You know, that every nutcracker that they make in this country should be named after her.
Oh, because she likes ballet.
Because they say she destroyed Trump in terms of the issue of closing the government, closing the country. You know, and she beat him at it because he had to open the country back up.
And firstly, that is just incorrect. That was in large part the labor unions that caused any kind of change in that.
Well, you know, my point being this is like, is this what politics is about? Who's got the bigger nuts? Or is it about governing a country, governing a nation, and seeing to a constituency, seeing to our population? You know, is the job of the politicians to stand up and go head to head with each other at like a wrestling match? Mm-hmm. To stand up on the sides of the ropes and bang their chest and say, I'm stronger than you, I'm bigger than you, sure. And not do
sounds great.
Anything for 20 years on immigration? But then say, look what's happening down there.
20 years? 120 years?
Well, yeah.
200 and whatever years.
I'm taking Omar.
I mean, yeah,
20 years, you know.
But
still, I mean, yeah, we're talking about a country here. I'm not talking about the president. You know, I'm not talking about the Congress in particular. I'm talking about the Constitution, how it's set up, what we're supposed to do, and how we're supposed to govern ourselves as a nation, and who and what we're supposed to consider, and what is the job that we're supposed to be getting done.
229 years.
229 years.
Okay. Absolutely.
Okay.
And all these constitutional realists, or whatever the term is, who say, you know, it's not a living document. Of course, that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's incorrect.
Yeah, that's
the whole reason for the Bill of Rights and potential for constitutional amendments. And immigration has been a problem ever since this country began. And it still hasn't been solved. And there is seemingly not nearly any political will to solve it.
I'm not even sure that there's the political. Yeah, I'm going to move ahead a little bit, but I'm going to contribute back to this discussion in this sense. This is our politics. This is the state of our politics. Tulsi Gabbard. How do you say her name?
Tulsi Gabbard.
Gabbard. She announced her presidency, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't more than 2 days later that NBC comes out with a major, major investigation.
Mm-hmm.
She's a Russian spy.
Well, yeah, didn't you know? Her and Maria Butina.
Yeah, right. She's a Russian spy,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Well, how do we know she's a Russian spy? Because she spoke out against intervening in Venezuela. Because she's a non interventionalist. Therefore, she's a Russian spy. And besides which, New Knowledge said she is. Now, who is New Knowledge? We talked about them a couple of weeks ago. They're an organization whose job is propaganda, whose mission statement is to do disinformation. They're the group that put out false Russian bots in Alabama against Moore.
Hey, those Russian bots are real.
Not these.
They're all real.
They admitted to putting them out. They admitted that that's their job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, their job is to give disinformation to America. And who did NBC use as its source on the relationship between Russia and Tulsi Gabbard? New Knowledge. Now, this is what I'm saying. As soon as somebody runs who disagrees with the current policy, she's a Russian. And we got already in our midst organizations whose job is to give disinformation that says that that is the case. Their job is to lie to the American people about those people who are running for office when they disagree with the current narrative.
Reminds me a lot of what our revered former President George W. Bush said, and it feels like it's a prevailing attitude at this time. When he said, "You're either with us or you're against us." And there is by far that dichotomy. If you disagree, especially on interventionalism, especially if you disagree on remaking the world, and especially the Western Hemisphere in America's image, if you disagree with that, if you disagree with these very neo-colonial, these very neoliberal policies that say that we have the right, nay, the responsibility to come in and promote freedom everywhere, to bring that capitalist visage to this country. If you disagree, then you're un-American. You're not patriotic, and much in the style of the 40s, 50s, and 60s, even further on, that you're a commie. You're a dirty red.
Listen to this on Venezuela, okay? You understand that the United States is in the process of causing regime change by unconventional warfare, and it's described very, very well. If you can get a hold of the Army manual on unconventional warfare, and you can see how you're supposed to use the banks and the economy to starve the people. It's in the Army manual how you do that. And I don't know why the Army would be the one using economics. I thought they used other weapons, but we have weaponized economics. It's in the Army manual. When Congressman Roger Williams from Texas was asked about whether or not we should be intervening in Venezuela, his answer to the reporter was, "I never thought about it. I never thought about it," he said. All right?
Sorry, what were you thinking about? You must have a lot going on in your life. You have time to think about it.
When I saw an interview, and I came, unfortunately, into the room too late to get the man's name. He was a black congressman. And they asked him about Venezuela. And he said, well, he said, after thinking, both sides are meddling, aren't they? And the reporter said, "No, I don't think so." And he says, "Well, that's not my issue. My issue is financial services. That's what I do, financial services, and he walked away.
And so he'll allow himself to just not get pushed around, but just to go with the party line or the establishment line with whatever else.
But you know,
it's not his concern.
What I'm saying, yeah, that these are real Congress people here. One who's saying he never thought about it. Now here we are. How long has this been going on that we've been talking about it every day in the news? That we're trying to do this stuff in Venezuela, and we're getting ready to send the army in there and everything. And a congressman says he never thought about it? He never thought about it?
Probably he should have.
And another congressman says, well, it's not my issue.
During an interview that aired on CBS just moments ago, President Trump spoke about his run for re-election in 2020 and the potential of going to battle with former Vice President Joe Biden. Let's get the bottom line with CNN's chief political correspondent, Dana Bash. Before we get the bottom line from you, Dana, let's go to the videotape.
Let me ask you about 2020.
Okay.
Who do you think your Democratic opponent will be? Joe Biden says he'll make a decision by January.
Well, I dream about Biden. That's a dream. Look, Joe Biden ran 3 times. He never got more than 1%. And President Obama took him out of the garbage heap, and everybody was shocked that he did. I'd love to have it be Biden. I think I'd like to have any one of those people that we're talking about. You know, there's probably the group of 7 or 8 right now. I'd like to run against any one of them. But Biden, never by himself, could never do anything.
All right, Dana Bash, first of all, I dream of ice cream, not Joe Biden. Secondly, Joe Biden ran twice, not 3 times. But third of all, is this a Jedi mind trick, or does President Trump really crave a run against Joe Biden?
I think both. I really do. Because first and foremost, aside from the language of being in the trash heap and things like that, he's not wrong about Joe Biden's record as a candidate for president. It's not great. It really isn't. Having said that, that is ancient history, and he did spend 8 years as a vice president who had a lot of respect across party lines. The danger, in my view, that Democrats are facing and the crossroads that they're facing is, are they going to make a mistake that the last candidate for president made on the Democratic side, which is run the last race? And that, in many cases, would be Joe Biden, because one of the many strengths that Democrats believe Joe Biden has is that he's a scrappy kid from Scranton, right? And he can appeal to those working-class Democrats that fled to Donald Trump because they felt that the Democratic Party was playing too much identity politics and that the Democratic Party didn't speak to them anymore. Joe Biden can do that. He has a history of doing that. He can speak their language. But again, that was the 2016 race, and the question is whether or not 2020 is going to be that or something completely different. And never mind Joe Biden's age and all the other, strikes against him. Yeah. It's a big open question.
If you are anti-imperialist, if you are anti-colonialist, you are seen as, soft on Russia. It's the red baiting all over again. I'm just awaiting for one of these new congressmen to propose HUAC again. HUAC. Of course, the House On-American Activities Committee. I'm really just, lying in wait for that to arrive.
It's just not in that form. Take the one word. There's one word in here. Socialism. He's in cahoots. He's in lockstep. He's with socialism. He's a socialist. He's a socialist sympathizer.
But as our dear president said, America will never be a socialist country. And as so many in Congress just mindlessly or mindfully stood up and applauded, like Elizabeth Warren, who incidentally just declared her bid for the president of the United States.
And who's being sued by the Cherokees for claiming that she was an American Indian.
And they repeatedly asked her not to claim that she was an American Indian.
And she used it. I mean, we saw examples of applications that she used it on. When it says down here ethnicity, she put American Indian. There was no mistaking about what her intentions were, and she was judged and accepted as a minority in her schools, including Harvard.
And not that it makes it much better, but this wasn't just one instance of her doing it. This was her doing it repeatedly
Yes.
over years.
Right.
At first, they contacted her quietly and said, "Please stop, referring to yourself as a Native American."
Yes.
And she ignored that and continued to do it repeatedly and over. So, I mean, at this point, what option do you have if someone is misrepresenting themselves?
Now, dig this, see. Elizabeth Warren is as capitalist as you can get. Booker, Cory Booker, is at least the second most capitalist you could get after Obama. I mean, in terms of Wall Street, this is Zuckerberg's buddy. This is Wall Street who supported this man. This is Wall Street who he's expecting to support his bid for the presidency. This is the guy who put charter schools where charter schools should never have gone before. This is the man who got more money from Wall Street than any other senator. And they call him a socialist.
What is his campaign motto, or what is his main campaign statement now? Like, not give peace a chance, but it's something along those lines. Like, why can't we all just get along?
And with God in it.
Of course.
He's going to pray for us. But they're taking the word socialist, you understand, and they're applying it to Elizabeth Warren. Mm-hmm. They're applying it to Booker,
And that really just waters down
socialism. Of course, they're trying to destroy Bernie with it. Of course, they're trying to destroy Jeremy Corbyn with it, And they're trying to say that Venezuela, they want to make this country like Venezuela.
What's happening is they're seeing it pick up steam and momentum, this idea of socialism, because it's one that a lot of people like. They actually like the idea that they have a real stake in their own democracy and their own government. They like the idea that they actually have a say and a voice and can share resources, and there are protections on labor. They won't get violated in that way. But what they're really still trying to do in this moment, and I think it's a very brief moment where they have the chance, is to really just paint socialism as this evil, controlling, authoritarian system, which really it's not. I mean, some people utilize it as such. Oh, I saw something terrible on Facebook the other day. He's still my Facebook friend. I don't know why. But this guy posting saying that the Nazis were socialists, despite them, putting socialists and communists in concentration camps. One of the references he used, you saw, or afterwards, that many of the Democrats who were at the State of the Union were wearing white, wearing all white, and he said, well, that's something interesting. That's what a lot of Nazis would wear at their party rallies. It's isn't that very much the same? And of course, very closely followed by the adage that the Democratic Party created the KKK and all these other, right-wing ridiculous concepts that are so often put forth in lowbrow debate.
Wow. Did he hear the relationship to the suffrage movement and the wearing of the white, or did he miss that?
No, and I'm sure, The Handmaid's Tale. I guess that was red, though, isn't it?
Okay, well, socialist is a brand that apparently works for them, and they can put it on people and never talk about what it is.
I think that time is really coming to an end, though.
Well, one thing they're trying to say to us is this, and you notice that Facebook cut all the accounts from ordinary people coming out of Venezuela, and so did these other so-called free internet social media sources. They don't want you to hear from the ordinary people. They don't want you to hear from the Venezuelans themselves about what they think about what's going on in their own country.
No.
But people who do go there and who do send back pictures, and pictures that we see of people in the street, we do not see starvation. There is inflation and there is a shortage on some goods. But we do not see starvation, not from all those bellies out in the street. And the people who they have talked to said, we're not starving. That's not our issue. There are things we can't get. And there are things that cost too much. But what you want to say is that this man has so ruined the country through socialism that people don't eat, that we're going to send humanitarian aid. And that is not the case. That's a made up case.
Yeah, that aid that they're sending is in no way humanitarian. Not even at all. And one thing that I do want to point out, one can oppose American intervention and regime change while not necessarily supporting Nicolas Maduro.
That's sure. A lot of people do.
It doesn't have to go hand in hand.
No, a lot of people do. A lot of people have said so. I mean, if you do pay attention to the media that do get there and listen to the people talk, they're talking about their sovereignty. The army doesn't, all of those people are not Maduro people. Mm-hmm. But they are people who believe in their own sovereignty. They believe that Venezuela has the opportunity and should have the opportunity to make its own mistakes. Just like every other nation.
Just like America.
Just like America, okay?
We've certainly made some big ones. Problem is, we export our mistakes all around the world.
Okay, but what I'm trying to also say here is that a part of this process is that we create a narrative about the situation and we deny access to any counter information, to any information that would say, no, hey, this is the reality, you know. What we have, besides the Durbans, I told him, you know, we have the Boltons. I suggest he retire to a nice quiet beach, John Bolton said. The sooner the better.
This is ominous.
The sooner he takes advantage, he will be on some quiet beach rather than at Guantanamo.
The sovereign leader of the legitimately democratic elected leader,
which we don't even admit to. We keep saying the illegally or the illegitimate, and he is not.
I know we talked about it last week, but I just keep coming back to that ad put forth by Donna Shalala and a bunch of other establishment Dems that was just so, you know, they take that tone that's like warm and caring, that they really care about your future and say Nicolas Maduro has to go. He was not elected democratically, and you know he's putting his people under the bus, etc., etc.
He was elected democratically,
whether or not we like him,
and he was elected democratically openly because there were monitors there.
Just because the opposition refused to take part in the election.
This guy, what's his name? Guido.
Bill.
He didn't run. He refused to run. Mm-hmm. But he claimed himself president. And we think that's democratic.
And make no mistake, Guaido is absolutely the product of the American and neoliberal school of economics.
Including the IMF and the guy who taught that course, those courses that he was at, was the former leader of the president of the IMF when he was at George Washington University. And the IMF, from the very beginning in 1946, was invented by America. And basically, it was to pull other countries in line. It was to give you money to make you do what we want you to do. Mm-hmm. You know, it was to make you do the kind of austerity that we want, to make the kind of changes that we want, or whatnot. It was to use money. In other words, that from 1946, when the IMF was first created, it already started to become weaponized. And now its weaponization is an absolute act.
And something I learned...
And Guido, by the way, invited them back and also said he's ready to give the oil to America.
And something that I learned this week, my new job, interestingly, now that I work almost 40 hours a week, I listen to a lot more podcasts. Mm. And one of the podcasts was all about, you know, what is neoliberalism and how it arose and everything. And something I was unaware of was the ITO, the International Trade Organization that was sought to be created after World War II.
That was before the World Bank.
Yeah.
I mean, the World Trade Organization.
Yeah. That actually gave a lot more power and legitimacy to what they call the Global South. That actually made it permissible to nationalize industries, or there's something else that allowed it. I mean, it was a lot more. It actually gave them a lot more legitimacy and say in economic matters.
One thing that it asked for are all countries where it dealt was full employment. Full employment.
It sounds like FDR's economic New Deal.
That's right, and that was a part of why it failed. Because we just didn't want to do that. How do you have control over people if they're fat and satisfied? You got to keep them anxious and lean
and overworked
and underpaid. But I mean, that's the anxious part. If you're overworked, then it's okay. You can support your family, send your kids to school, so they won't be overworked.
And you don't want them to have time to sit back and contemplate what you're doing.
No. Pompous, referencing Maduro. Our objective is to starve the military until they overthrow the regime. It's time for the world to make a decision. No delays. Either they are with us or with Maduro and his minions. And
it sounds like how he talks about Putin, how he talks about Bashar al-Assad, about all these individuals whose country we want to go in and to Americanize their economies.
But how can we say that we are intentionally starving a country, and then on the other hand say that they're hungry because of poor administration and corruption? How could we, on the one hand, put sanctions on people, and then on the other hand, say these people are suffering because of their poor government?
I mean, it's cognitive dissonance. It's compartmentalization.
But how do we stand up in front of the world and say it's our intention, our objective to starve them?
That was what Madeleine Albright said about Iraq.
Hezbollah, pompous again, is in Venezuela, being directed by Iran. And we have a responsibility to Venezuela, to the world, to defeat them there. And I thought that was the ultimate lie. That is the ultimate one, ladies and gentlemen. We are in Venezuela to fight terrorism that's coming from Iran.
And bring freedom. Oh, yeah, Hezbollah. For some reason, Hezbollah has taken a real interest in Venezuela.
yeah.
It's something, right?
Yeah. Somebody said there's as many Hezbollah in Venezuela as there are here. Maybe we should attack ourselves.
There's as many Hezbollah in Venezuela as there are MS-13 trying to get in our southern border through caravans, which is zero or next to zero. Maybe a few, you never know. Maybe they're just trying to come to America for whatever reason. Maybe there are some Hezbollah guys there, just on vacation or something. But I highly doubt there's any focused or concentrated movement of Hezbollah to really get involved in Venezuela. That doesn't make sense.
Iran and Venezuela, y'all. Watch it. Next thing you know, they'll be in your backyard. I put down which fear is the greatest fear because that's what this whole thing, all of this, comes around to being about. Be afraid. Be very afraid. You notice that we didn't have an argument in this country about the intelligence versus the president in the sense that anybody said relax. We have an argument going on with the Democrats being on the side of intelligence.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. You were trying that.
Which is the greatest fear? We should be more afraid of Syria. No, we should be more afraid of North Korea. No, we should be more afraid of Iran. No, we got to stay in Iraq. Oh, no. We should be worried about the Taliban. Oh, people, be scared. Be scared, people. Be very scared.
And I think you need to look no further than Afghanistan to see how this really ends up playing out. And now the Taliban is in discussions with the Russians to legitimize their own government in Afghanistan. But apparently now the Taliban are, accepting of women. Like they're all about women's rights. And wow, they really turned a corner over these last 16 years of ceaseless fighting against America, right? 18.
18 years. Yeah. It's been a long time, ladies and gentlemen. That's the longest running war that we've ever had.
And we lost. We're not losing. We lost.
No, that a long time ago.
We didn't admit it.
No,
and we
well,
won't
we didn't
admit
admit that in Vietnam. We didn't admit that in Korea. We didn't admit that in Grenada.
America's never lost a war, mostly because we've never admitted to losing a war. We've lost plenty of wars.
I remember somebody saying when they were talking about how do we get out of Vietnam, and somebody said, just say we won and come home. Why not?
Any number of reasons, but...
What's Johnson's famous line when he first becomes the president? He's interested in the Great Society. He's interested in how he's going to bring America together. But he gets chumped in Vietnam because he says, I don't want to be the first American president to lose a war. That was his mantra. And that's why he stayed in Vietnam. That's why how many thousand more people died?
Was it worth it? That's my question.
Ask Madeleine Albright. It's always worth it.
And we've been talking about this pretty much throughout this role of neoliberalism in protecting current day global capitalism, because that's what it's designed to do.
Mm-hmm.
That is the whole point. It's creation of these institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, and of course the World Trade Organization, and any other number of these trade deals. How do I keep forgetting this? The big trade deal that was coming between America and the countries in the Pacific.
ITT.
IPP.
IPP. Yeah. ITT is which one is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all these institutions, they just have the goals. They have these goals. They want to thwart the movement of labor. They don't want labor to move. Although, interestingly, in early neoliberalism, they thought that was okay. At least some thinkers did. But now they want to severely restrict the flow of labor. And I think that's something a lot of people ignore when we talk about closing our southern border. The fact that, yeah, we don't want to let people in, but also we don't necessarily want to let people out. And that's a big reason there are all these new travel restrictions and guidelines about leaving the country. And I think one day we may turn around and see that our ability to even leave is going to be greatly restricted.
I don't think that we ever had a discussion. I know I had never heard a discussion on the influence of mechanization on the use of immigration. You know what I'm saying? You go like to something like Grapes of Wrath, where you have a discussion of the migrant. Why he's here? He's here to pick stuff. He's here when things come in season, and you need a lot of hands out in the field. He's here to glean your crop. So they used to control the border, you understand, such that when you needed them, you let a lot in, and when you don't need them, you don't let a lot in, you know. And then things started to happen. They used to move from job to job, where they started staying here, and that starts to slow down their control over this process. But what really, really does it is mechanization, where you don't need as many hands to pick the apples, you know. To pick whatever. Certain things you still need hands, but I'm sure that at some point they're going to come around with some kind of machine that's going to shake that tree and pick them up off the ground. I mean, they got things now that just grab the whole trunk of the tree and shake it and shake all the apples off.
Yeah, the tree be damned.
Yeah. You know.
No one thinks about the tree.
But what I'm saying is that your whole use and need of this migrant labor, these migrant hands, is different now. You know, in the 30s, when we came to this point, you understand what happened in the 30s was that we ran out of the ability to pay labor, and we had a lot of excess labor here.
So we ran out of the desire.
Yeah, well, we wanted to get them out of the country then. So we passed what kind of laws? Marijuana. They smoked marijuana. Your marijuana laws in this country originally in 1933 come from two sources. One is that you want to get rid of the immigrants, and two is these black jazz artists are using marijuana to get white girls. Those were the two motivating factors to pass your new...
That all sounds fine. Have fun. I don't know.
This started this whole thing. Of course, it really became politicized in the 60s.
Oh, absolutely.
But I digressed from your neoliberal discussion about global capitalism bringing everything under its command, or trying to, but it didn't work. Global capitalism, one of the things that's happening today is the failure of global capitalism.
I mean, it's the failure, perhaps. It's just the downslope of the trend. It's the scarcity of resources. And it's this hyper protection of these institutions that just leads to countries even threatening. I mean, it's a big part of Venezuela, and it's a big part of Mexico. Obrador, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
even stating that he may want to nationalize their major oil company that was, I think, a function of the nation of Mexico in the first place, and just facing huge redress from World Bank and IMF and any other number of banks around the world.
The Bank of New York.
If you do that, like, you're cut off. Like, we will not allow you to run a deficit. Like, we're not going to stop funding your country if you even seek to stop the free flow of capital.
You stop paying your teachers and give us that money.
And something I was mentioning earlier is like, oh, well, we'll allow you to, privatize more. You can certainly sell off more parts of that
to us.
Yeah.
They just they just ruled in New York that the major hedge funds, guys who went down to Mexico and ripped off all that. I mean, to Puerto Rico in this case, and ripped off Puerto Rico. The case was just resolved that the little guys who had bought into Puerto Rico through those bonds, if you want to call them that, those guys, they don't have to get paid back. But these big hedge funds, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
Every one of them has got to be paid.
In full.
So whether or not you pay your teachers or whether or not you give health care to your populace, no count. You got to pay these hedge funds. And we're talking about big people. $1 billion. And $1 billion don't say nothing.
And something we got to remember, this is not inevitable. This is not just inevitability. These are choices that we make. These are choices that we consciously make.
This is how we steal from the world. This is what this globalization did. It gave them an opportunity to go another way to steal the resources after the end of colonialism. During colonialism, you just went and you sent your gunboat and you just took the doggone resources.
Gunboat diplomacy.
And now you just use Hezbollah. It may as well be Hezbollah because the terrorism from a hedge fund is the same as the terrorism from a Hezbollah, as far as I'm concerned.
It may seem softer and more humane, but that's just more depersonalized. It's less. There's not a bogeyman. It's just this set of algorithms and institutions is depersonalized. Say, oh well. There's no to blame. It's just the IMF. It's just the World Bank. It's just the Bank of New York. It's just these institutions that can be nameless and faceless.
Well, what you get? You take Bill Clinton.
I'm good. I'm good on that. You can have him.
Bill, you see, he gave us NAFTA. And NAFTA. Within 3 years of NAFTA being passed, our major automakers were all in Mexico. Mm-hmm. Jobs left here like you wouldn't believe, This was so-called globalization, But one of the things that happens to globalization and your jobs going to Mexico is that after a while, the people in Mexico say, wait a minute, we need health care. Or wait a minute, we need a better hourly wage. Or wait a minute, we're still starving.
Or wait, we don't want to work 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
Which your lobbyist have come down and prevented our labor movement from even starting.
Mm-hmm. So now you want to move someplace else. And guess what? Those people are going to catch on too. You can't keep moving from here to Taiwan, from Taiwan to Singapore, from Singapore to where, looking for cheap labor. Because everywhere you go, the quality of life issue is going to follow you. If it's not there before you get there, it's like ISIS. Every place the American army goes, ISIS springs up around them. And every place that industry goes, people looking for a better life than what that industry is giving them grows up around them. For crying out loud. Lo and behold, people actually want something out of life.
And they want to be treated like valuable people.
Human beings.
Yeah, how about that?
Boy, that's audacious, you know.
But it just in summary of this, I'd like to very much encourage people to check out a podcast that I just found out about this week. It's titled The Dig. It's mostly based function of Jacobin magazine, and it's been going for a few years. It just covers a lot of these issues in great depth. Some I listened to this week were about one about neoliberalism, and one was about well, as I call it, global climate destabilization. You can call it climate change. I won't, but whatever.
And for those of you who still like to read and still like to glean information through that process, A Brief History of Neoliberalism by Professor David Harvey is a recommendation. It is a brief history of neoliberalism, and it tells you, it fleshes out these points that we have just hit on.
Absolutely. Speaking of climate destabilization, Extinction Rebellion, we talked about them a few months back, and intermittently throughout. Apparently, they had a demonstration at, was it that main ice rink?
Yeah,
in New
that
York
one
City?
with that statue. With which god is that? Is it the messenger or Ares? Is it Ares?
Hermes.
Hermes is Hermes. That's what it is. Hermes.
Okay.
He's laying there on the side with one leg up or whatever, and he's golden, and he got something swinging off of him. And
Of course, in come the fundamentalist Christians,
oh yeah,
conspiracy theorists who say regardless, never mind all that.
Yeah,
But
he is
yeah,
naked.
yeah.
People. Extinction Rebellion is a very, very serious statement today. They sprung up out of the inadequacy of the response that we have on these urgent climate matters. They've come to the point of recognizing that just simply demonstrating in the street, just simply raising your voice, just simply explaining, hasn't worked. And they're trying to get your attention. And so they have a rebellion going on. Now, it's interesting because they had a major get your attention rebellion demonstration at this ice rink. And, it was covered in New York by one news carrier, one television news station. And I saw the report, and the report was deliberately a stand-up after they were already gone, to say that it had happened here and all is quiet now. There was no explanation of what they were demonstrating about except to say it had to do something with climate change. There was no explanation as to who they are or the urgency of their message. By design. But, this is the disservice. This is the disservice that the media is providing us today. The reason there is Extinction Rebellion is because of this. And because of this, there's no mention of Extinction Rebellion. Extinction Rebellion. So, when we die, a part of why we die, New York Times, NBC, CBS, is it the K there or is it K out on the West Coast? Whatever it was in New York, NBC, Look, y'all, you, you chumps. You're not doing anything for us, and you're lying to us. And one of the major lies you could tell is omission. When you don't tell us the important events that happened that day, that gives us the information that we need to make the kind of decisions so that we can continue positively to go forward, you're not doing that. If we want this information, we have to go out and look for it on our own, search for it, and use our energy and a part of our day to get the information we need to go to tomorrow. And you keep telling us that that was your raison d'etre, that was your reason for being, that was why you came into existence, the so-called fourth estate, where you're failing us. We need to know about Extinction Rebellion and many other things you aren't telling us.
And you're not going to find out much in 90 seconds where a news source doesn't even tell you what they're about or what they're doing.
Didn't even show a picture of the group. Not even a picture.
And just a statement about resistance in general saying, oh, it's safe now. It's safe now. You can go back there and distract yourselves through ice skating. That this big bad protest isn't going to threaten you anymore. It's not going to scare you. And to be honest, I believe that is one of the points of Extinction Rebellion, to scare people into action, into realization.
Right. They want to scare you with the truth. They're not making a monster movie. All they're doing is coming out and telling you the truth, and the truth is scary.
They're pointing out the monster that already exists.
Amen.
Netflix.
That's a good one.
Made $845 million in profits. Not just 845. That's what their profits.
That's their profits.
And they paid zero taxes.
As a matter of fact,
they paid negative taxes.
They got. I thought they got 21 million. That should be million. Oh no, that's another one. I thought that Netflix got $21 million in rebate. They got 240 something $million rebate on their taxes that they didn't pay.
For what?
So heck can I mean? On taxes they didn't pay, they got a rebate. But that happens with General Electric. That happens with all those big companies.
It certainly wasn't for job creation, and it certainly wasn't for infrastructure creation.
Look, the banks made $21 billion. That money that they would have paid in taxes, they didn't pay. And yet they eliminated thousands of jobs last year. So, of course, it's not for job creation. They eliminated jobs, and they saved $21 billion in their taxes. The bad thing about this, the terrible thing about this, while you're paying your taxes, while you're doing your taxes this year, reflect on it, is that it's perfectly legal. They didn't cheat. They followed the law the way the law is written. Now, you will have people come in there and tell you that, hey, these Donald Trump people, they're messing with the taxes. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, and we're here to tell you, that this has been the case in America for a very long time, and it's going to continue after Donald Trump if we're going to be the believers that he's the cause of it. Please. It's perfectly legal because of the law. That the more money you make, the less you pay. There's no such thing as fair share. Fair share is only for you chumps out there who make $40,000 a year.
And so many examples I've heard lately of people in the lowest or lower income brackets paying more taxes. They pay more taxes now.
Yeah.
It's not even the same.
Everybody who figured their taxes see that they're paying more.
They went up.
Yeah.
Something is not computing.
Oh, it's computing, all right. Oh yeah, it's computing.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, true. We know exactly how it's computing.
True, but,
Yeah. Look, they're wearing yellow vests in France for a reason. This is one of the major reasons. I heard a woman in France say the other day, we are run by elites who know nothing and care nothing about us.
Yeah.
We're run by elites, she said. Not representatives of us, not a representative government in a democracy. We're run by elites who know nothing about us and care nothing about us. And you wonder why they wear yellow vests? 2/3 of the country favor the yellow vest being in the streets after 13 weeks, after 2,000 injuries, after more than a dozen deaths. 2/3 of the people think that they are being led by elites who siphon off the money at the top and care nothing about those at the bottom. We've been there, ladies and gentlemen. We had Occupy telling us that message. And we had Obama who directed the nationwide effort to put them down. Don't forget there were conference calls at night on tactics to use around the country with all these different police forces and all these different mayors.
And sheriffs.
And sheriffs, you know.
They learned from each other. They built their tactics amidst shared information. And there was this just push. And from Obama, absolutely so. To just stifle the Occupy movement and to stifle the water protector movement and to stifle all these movements that arose because of genuine social inequalities.
Yeah, well, this is where we are. And in France, they have now passed a law, or they're in the process of bringing into existence a law. They passed it, but it has a time period or something that it has to go through before it becomes effect.
Yeah, only 20 years or so.
What?
No, it's sooner than that.
Like March or something.
Probably.
This is the anti-riot law. I mean, you know, in France, you have to say it's not as bad as in Philadelphia, where you only had your what did we have there? What was it called? Freedom zones or free speech zones?
I thought you were talking about MOVE.
Oh, MOVE! Oh my God! Yeah, but I'm well, talking about these places where you could go and make your little protest speeches.
You're talking about the free speech zone.
The free speech zone.
The DNC.
Right. Okay, we got to in France. We got to say we're going to have a demonstration, and we have to get permission for it. And we say we're going to have a demonstration. It's going to march from here to here, and we're going to speak over here, and we're going to say these kinds of things. And then you get permission. And all these 12, 13 weeks now, they've been getting permission. Now the state, France, the country goes and passes a law that says we're going to put restrictions on demonstrating. And they said, well, we're not going to ask for permission anymore. You know? When you give permission, you tell them where you're going to be. You tell them what time you're going to be there. Mm. You're saying every weekend in France for 13 weeks now, we've had fights between the police and the people. We're saying that the police themselves are getting tired of every weekend. What are you going to do this weekend? I'm going to go out and fight the people.
Well, it sounds nice. It sounds like a nice pastime. It sounds like something cops probably...
Yeah, well, you know, it's Saturday. You got to fight the people, you know.
And Sunday, I'm going to go to the beach.
Well, they're not going to tell them where to be anymore for their fight. They're just going to plan the demonstration and hold their demonstration because they say that the state is becoming more and more restrictive on what they can do and what they can express, what their First Amendment could be. They don't have a First Amendment in France, but you know what I mean. They're not going to cooperate anymore. You know.
Good.
Okay, I mean, they've come to a point where they're asking for the overthrow of their government. And you know what I'm waiting for? I'm waiting for somebody to stand up in the parliament and declare himself president so we could say, oh, he's the president, and we could put Macron aside. Just like we do with Guido and Maduro.
Guido. Damn it, Bill. Every time. Every freaking time. Anyway.
This Guido didn't run,
no.
but he declared himself president, and we're backing him. So if somebody would stand up in France because the people are out in the street and asking their president to resign. You know, France recalled its ambassador from Italy. You know, because the foreign minister, what's his name, Mayo, he went and met with the Yellow Jackets and said something nice about them and about them representing the future of where Europe will be going. Hey.
Done.
Hey. Oh boy, they didn't like that.
How dare you speak that kind of truth?
Oh my God, they pulled him back. I mean, they pulled the ambassador back. Excuse me, they can't change him from being a foreign minister, but they kicked the ambassador out. They say that this is the biggest rift between Italy and France since World War II, and they were on opposite sides of World War II.
Okay, I'm gonna bring that down a notch. So this next section, we of course talked about FDR's economic New Deal, and of course, one of his grand claims and sources of pride was that he saved capitalism. So we can also take him with a grain of salt sometimes.
Yeah.
But there's a great article in Jacobin that talks about 5 freedoms that all people should have. And just to briefly go over it, I'm not sure how much time I'm going to devote to it today, but we can just start with a brief overview. And there are 5 freedoms that they propose that all people should have. Those are freedom from fear, freedom from toil, freedom to move, freedom from domination, and the freedom to live. That all sounds pretty solid, right? That sounds like 5 freedoms everyone should have.
It sounds very universal, simple, direct, and undeniable. That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
And this freedom from fear is not only freedom from fear of military conflict, which is what FDR was saying, of course it's that as well, but it's also from the fear of climate destabilization. The idea that, you know, I do, and I don't know if you do. I mean, maybe fear, there is fear though, and a lot of people I know, like they live in fear that this is almost inevitably going to happen, that we will be encountering this in the next 20, 30, 40 years, that climate's going to get very unstable.
Yeah, I don't use like it's inevitable, like that's something that we didn't have control over. I mean, it's happening because of our activities. And I'm certain that it's going to happen, and it scares me because of my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. I'm old enough that I will get through. I will get through. It won't get too bad before I go, you know. But I'm leaving behind my offspring, my prodigy, my loved ones. And I got a 3-year-old granddaughter right now that's just a charmer. You know, she's a real charmer. I'm telling you.
Well, she's chatty.
You know, oh my goodness, birds. Oh, she loves birds, you know. She loves to draw. You know, she loves to run from room to room and sit on the steps. You know, she's just a nice little girl, a wonderful human being, and you look forward to what she's going to grow up into and how she's going to tend the world. And it ain't going to be like that. You know, aside from where we're going politically and socially, where we're going physically in terms of what we're doing to the world, I'm scared for her. I'm very scared for her. They're not going to have it easy. And I don't know, after my great-grandkids, I don't know if that's the end of it or what.
Let's say she lives to your age or older. We're talking the year 2100.
Yeah.
What's going to be left?
Nah. No.
Wow. So the next one, freedom from toil. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. That's just that we should not have to work incredibly long hours for incredibly low wages in grueling and physically destructive
It doesn't mean we shouldn't work.
tasks. No.
Work is good for us. Work is healthy. We need to work.
Yeah, but not 12 hours.
We don't need to toil.
Yeah.
We don't need to act like peons. And
No, that's why I like how they describe it. And freedom to move. We see so many restrictions on people even coming to America or going from country to country in Europe. Hungary is really, cementing their borders. And something we don't talk about much on this show is Viktor Orban in Hungary and just the increasingly authoritarian tone that Hungary is taking. I actually studied abroad at Central European University when I was in college, and great school, but now they're moving to Prague because Hungary is simply too limiting, and they're trying to have a say in the curriculum that this university is trying to teach. And any responsible university, when the government is coming in and saying, you can't teach this and this and this, and you should send us lists of people who are involved in socialist student organizations, which I believe is what they were doing, any university worth its salt should do the same thing and say, peace out, we're not going to stay.
One thing, you're talking about movement, but 2 years ago, in our after school, we have a lot of kids who come from families that come from South America, that come from the Andes regions where those mountains are. And 2 years ago, we studied how people came into that area. We started in Africa, and we looked at the migration of man from out of Africa. Realized, of course, that man was birthed in Africa and spread out all over the world. And we looked at, and there's some very good interactive stuff in the on the internet now where you could actually see the trails and see the lines and whatnot, and the ages. It's really interesting stuff. But we looked at this, and we looked at the movement of man. We looked at how man got to Asia and how man got to South America. The movement of man. It's just that's what it's been.
Yeah.
Out of Africa and all over the world. Look at us. We're all over the world. Out of this one little place, And then we come to a point where we become so audacious, we say nobody else can come here. This is a border. This is a barrier. This is a wall.
And something that's very important about what you're saying and how the early humans or the earlier humans were just very migratory, and even you see in Africa and other places, they're becoming much more limited, unfortunately, and very restricted to certain spots and areas. And a lot of cultures, especially nomadic cultures, are dying out as a result.
Yeah.
That
you get a bad name being a gypsy.
It is seemingly part of human nature to be on the move, to be transitory.
This has
you
been
need or you want to.
Us from the beginning. If that's us from the beginning, of course it's a part of our nature. It's become who we are.
Either by need or by desire.
Just by what's inside of us. I mean, what causes us to speak? It's inside of us to speak.
Absolutely.
It's inside of us to move. And then we're going to get all these forces because of these other things we're doing. Like we create economies that don't work. We create wars that make people move. We create earth environments where people are going to get flooded out. That movement is actually becoming more and more, again, important in order for people to survive. You can't live in a country where people come and bomb you every day if you're in Libya. You want to get out. Yeah, you don't want to sit around and get bombed every day. You don't want to live in a country where the Americans come, like Syria, and bomb your hospital and your school. You move. You get out of there. And you don't want to be in Honduras and Venezuela because of things that people are doing to your country. And we make it important for people to move, and then we make it impossible for them to move here.
And what you were just saying ties in very well with this next point. Freedom from domination.
That
the few should not have immense power over the many, which is seemingly right now the case.
You mean like those elites who are running France and don't know and care about the people?
Yes, that's yet but one example of a multitude. Absolutely.
Freedom to live. Does that imply health care?
It includes freedom from want, access to basics, food, drink, shelter, healthcare, dental, education, music, art, and green spaces.
Green spaces. Now, ain't that something?
And the freedom to enjoy life, to be creative, to produce and delight in communal luxuries, to soak up public goods we create for everyone's pleasure, to love who we love, and to find new people to love as well. Freedom to live a good life spans the shared wonders of knowledge, leisure, and adventure.
I think that's a good one. I think we should talk about these a lot.
Absolutely.
A lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right on. I like
Okay.
that article a lot.
I like this racism thing.
Oh, I like racism too.
It's funny.
Oh, that's not what you meant.
Oh, I like it. I mean, it's funny. It's really funny. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Funny America. You know, Saturday Night Live every day.
I guess.
Oh, what's this guy? Governor Ralph Northam.
Oh, you mean blackface?
He's a Democrat in Virginia, and I don't know how he got to be governor before somebody found the yearbook pictures of him in blackface.
I often wonder if people find it, let them get elected, and then just use that to just blow up their administration and create chaos.
Well, what about the people on the other side who finding it and saying, why not, you shouldn't run? Because this is going to come back and haunt you.
There are also those perhaps who know it's the case and want to send that message, want to send that message of, implied racism.
Before I want to say something about Justin Fairfax, but before that, Mark Herrag, the Attorney General, blackface. What's his name? Thomas Norman. What was his position? What is his position?
Yearbook editor.
He was the yearbook editor that had all these blackface pictures in it. But what is his position in the state now? Here's my point. Look, this guy. Oh my goodness! I just knocked over the mango. Oh, I drank it all first. Good. Okay. This guy, Ralph Northam, first he said, wow. Then he said, it's not me. It's not me. I didn't do it.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, some people have said, it's impossible for him not to remember that he did that. And that's absolutely true. But when somebody says something like that, you just don't accept it. You just don't believe them. You don't even respond to something like that. I mean, that's ridiculous. I didn't know. I didn't do it. Oh, it wasn't me. I mean, come on. That's just crazy. Why am I going to entertain that? That's just going right to, yeah, okay, yeah,
Gosh, I'm sorry, y'all. I was unaware.
But the thing that this points out, and this is what my point is.
I was temporarily blind.
Is that, look, this is not only widespread, it is a custom. It is a tradition. It is the way they lived up until today, if not including today, in Virginia and a lot of other places. I don't know what this thrill is of putting blackface on, but that's what they have done. They had whole minstrel shows. The fact that it appears in so many yearbooks. Come on. Faculty advisors and all this kind of stuff that are involved with yearbooks. All these people, it had to be a tradition. It's a way of life.
They knew. They had to know.
Sir, it's a way of life. It's not a fact that they know. It's a fact that they're all involved in it, that they all do it, that they all did it for generations. Why? I don't know. But it's obvious that they all did it for generations. You can go to, I'm sure, 1,000 yearbooks and find these same things and 1,000 different kinds of celebrations. Ralph Northam, he talked about another time when he was pretending to be Michael Jackson, he said, doing the moonwalk in blackface. In other words, this is not a one-time thing. This is a tradition. This is what they do. This is how they lived for years. And we've come to a time in America where it's not acceptable to do that publicly anymore in view of the nation as a whole. So it comes out, and now it has a negative connotation. But at one time in Virginia, it didn't mean anything.
How about it's not okay to do it privately either?
Well, at one time, it didn't mean anything. Publicly, privately, or anything. I agree with you. But you certainly, the problem comes because of the public, not because of the private. But what I'm saying is that it's not a question of whether I know or don't know. It's a question that, come on, this is imbued in your whole culture. This is a part of what you do. This is a part of who you are. You white people putting on blackface is a part of who you are. You had whole minstrel shows in this country for years and years and years and years putting on blackface. And you're going to pretend like all of a sudden, oh my God, please. Not only did y'all know about it, everybody participated in it. When I was a kid in Philadelphia, on New Year's, every New Year's, people would walk down Market Street with blackface and down Broad Street with black faces. The minstrel shows in Philadelphia were blackface for centuries. Come on, that's a tradition. That's not just a happening. He didn't just happen to put on blackface for that yearbook photo. He didn't just happen to edit yearbook after yearbook after yearbook with black faces in it.
Nope.
It was a tradition. It was a way of life. It is Virginia. That's it, y'all. That's America. That's what we are as a nation. That's what we've been as a nation. This is an opportunity to recognize what you are. This is not an opportunity to stand on the side and say, what? Is that me? Did I do that?
Yeah, fool, it's you.
Please. Are you stupid, Northern? Are you stupid, Herrig? Are you stupid, Norman? Are you also stupid? You don't know what you did or why you did it? Is that what I'm supposed to believe? That y'all not prejudiced, y'all not racist, y'all just plain stupid?
I've heard this argument on the internet that perhaps back in '84 when this happened, he just didn't know. Like, he didn't know it was wrong. It's just something you did. He was just a high schooler. He was just following orders or whatever.
I don't buy that.
No, it's ridiculous.
You're telling me that as a nation, that all these years that you practice racism and do these things that you have no idea that it's wrong. Then you're telling me you're all stupid. You're telling me that these people get to high school and don't know the difference between an insult and a compliment.
But also, even now, you didn't ever even take that moment and say, yeah, I was in high school, I was an idiot, what I did was stupid, and this is what I did, just hoping it went away, or just not thinking anything of it.
But something, look, when we talked about, what's the name of that Catholic school in Kentucky?
Covington Christian Academy.
They had blackface on in the gym. They called it school spirit. The coach was leading the cheers. You understand what I'm saying? We're not talking about stupid high school kids. We're talking about a tradition.
Yep.
When the coach led the cheers, the coach is not a stupid high school kid. The coach is a grown-up adult, a middle-aged man. When these kids are in high school and they do yearbooks, there are faculty advisors on yearbooks. The faculty went along with it. The school went along with it. It's a tradition. It's not because they're stupid kids and didn't know what they were doing. They were supervised. Don't take out supervision. Don't take out because they are kids, they had faculty advisors. You didn't put your yearbook together without faculty advisors in high school.
Nope.
You didn't have a newspaper without faculty advisor, or a school magazine without faculty advisor, or anything
Of course not.
without faculty advisor. So let's not pretend that it's because they were kids. What was what the adults then? If it was because they were kids. If they were kids, they were supervised.
They were there telling them to do it.
Well then. Then we can't go down that route and say, well, because we didn't know what we were doing. That's invalid. You can't even bring that up. Just go ahead, everybody, and accept that this was the American way. Period. And stop making excuses or reasons. There is no excuse and no reason. This is the American way. Accept it.
Or don't accept it.
Or don't accept
and
it.
change it.
Okay. Okay. Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. Oh, I know. One thing I was going to say, though, is that here we go. Cory Booker and a couple other people, Bernie even. You see, when Kavanaugh was going for his hearing, and these women were accusing Kavanaugh of doing these things when he was a stupid kid in high school, quote unquote.
Yeah.
You know, Cory Booker said, you have to take the word of the women. And so did Bernie.
Yeah.
And now with Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, they go back to them. And they say, Cory, should we take the word of the women? And Cory says,
oh, gee.
no. You know. And they go back to Bernie. And Bernie first refuses to answer, and then when he gets on an elevator, I'm watching the camera, he turns around to the camera and says, no. I say, Bernie, you know, come on, Bernie. You just made a hypocrite of yourself. You know, Democrats, if it's a Democrat, it's still wrong. Republicans, if it's a Republican, it's still wrong. Cory, if you take the words of the women for a Republican, you take the word of the women for a Democrat. You know, partisan politics does not morality make. Please, let's not confuse the two.
Nope.
There is, you remember that cop that shot the black guy who had the gun in the mall?
Yeah, you're going to have to be more specific.
No, yeah, I know.
No, I know. I know you.
Alabama.
Yeah.
Somebody gets shot, and this guy is a soldier, and also he has a permit to carry a gun, and he happens to be there. And he goes and he tries to ameliorate the situation. Cops come. His back to the cops. The cops on the scene for 2 seconds. You can count them. Shoots him 3 times. Kills him. Shoots him in the back. We want you to know that what the cop did was fine. We want you to know that it was ruled that the cop acted within his quote-unquote legal authority. Apparently shooting a man 3 times in the back without asking questions of the man and what he's doing, without giving warning, without even notifying the man that you're on the scene, is within the legal duties of a police officer in America. And while I'm on this subject, and we will talk more about guns, the Chicago Police Department, remember that guy, what's his name? He shot, Van Dyke, shot 17 times in the back and front and everything when he was laying on the ground, because he said he came at him with a knife, which he didn't, and then the cop finally got convicted last week of second-degree murder, and he's going to jail for a couple months. Chicago then goes under this federal mandate that they have to come up with some new ways of dealing with the community. So they sit down and they hammer it out. And now Chicago, the consent decree goes into effect. The court has mandated historic reforms to the Chicago Police Department. Isn't that wonderful?
They need them.
Yeah, okay.
They shouldn't have been in the first place, though.
Now listen, they have a course as a part of this, in which the police officers teach the other police officers how they're supposed to act with the community and how to work on community relations. The police officers that they have teaching the course, or the police officers that they had to take off the street because there has too many complaints against them for racism and those kinds of activities. And because they're not on the street, they're available to teach this course. Mm-hmm. So who's teaching the police how to handle the Negroes in their community? The police who the Negroes have complained about beating on them and shooting on them and mistreating them and mishandling them, and they are the ones who are going to teach the others.
Of course.
And this is in line, you understand, with the federal mandate that they change the police culture. This is how they do it. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no intent. The fact that they fought against changing is an indicator. But there is no intent among our police to change their ways, to change their policing, or to become, what, like British police? Like French police? Who they don't go around shooting people?
No, this just to me feels like a way to help people get away with it more, to say the right thing when they're questioned, and to present it to keep doing the same actions they're doing, but in a way that avoids litigation.
Yes. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So,
yeah.
We
don't intend to change Alabama, Georgia, Chicago, and I mentioned these three in particular because the last 2 weeks we've talked about stories from those places. We don't intend to change. And we don't intend to change in many, many respects. I mean, our nature, but we were just talking about racism in Virginia and all that kind of thing and all that. As long as we say, well, because they were just stupid teenagers, then we don't intend to change.
Nope. We
don't intend to change when it comes to the weather. We don't intend to change when it comes to policing. Black lives will never matter. This is America, y'all, blah, blah, blah. And it's all because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is America. If you want to call him a racist, misogynist, et cetera, what do you think the country is? Who do you think he represents? Please. Please, please. And I'm not talking about people as if they're a basket of deplorables either. I'm talking about the institutions in this country and how they support these dynamics, not only for years, but for centuries now.
Yeah. So I like to skip the gun culture for now because we've got like 15 minutes left.
Oh, okay.
But I do definitely want to mention the Supreme Court halting the abortion ban in Louisiana, at least temporarily. This was a law that said abortion providers had to have admitting permission to a hospital within 30 miles of where that procedure was done. Firstly, that would necessitate that a hospital would be within 30 miles of a procedure, of a place where a procedure was done. But what is especially frightening to me was that only John Roberts dissented amongst the more conservative judges. I guess we'll call them conservative. He was the only one. And this is getting very close. This is getting very close to a very serious questioning of Roe.
Well, I mean, here's my point. It's like, how many years ago was Roe v. Wade?
It was what, 72?
72.
Or 70s.
70s. 50 years, basically, right?
Jeez.
And we're still arguing about it. You understand what I'm hinting at here? I mean, we haven't accepted the idea of a woman's right in her own body. Just like we haven't accepted that water is precious.
Which should be...
That races are equal. I mean, we just don't accept these things. We've been fighting for 50 years over whether or not a woman has a right to her own body. And they're still fighting it. And it's still an argument. And they're trying to make a court to change it. That's the issue. If there's one issue that they use to remake this court, that's the issue. When they run on that issue. They run on becoming the Supreme Court justice so that they can do that. So when they get there, they have to meet that expectation. It's surprising to me that you got that one vote.
No, I am definitely very wary of John Roberts and some of his decisions in terms of corporations and privacy,
Yeah,
undoubtedly.
yeah.
But he's been consistent on this.
Okay, but you understand why I say it's surprising? I mean, because we intentionally are promoting or creating that kind of a court. And if it doesn't happen, it'll happen the next time. How long does, I mean, I hate to, I'm not wishing nothing on nobody. But when somebody gets old and starts having operations and start having cancer, how much time do you expect them to be on the court?
Yeah.
There's going to be another judge. It's going to be Roe v. Wade that decides who that judge is going to be. And that judge is going to be sent there for that very purpose. It's purposeful on that one issue.
But also the idea that the Senate could just obstruct Merrick Garland for over a year and refuse to hold a single hearing is abominable. Look, I don't think Merrick Garland was perfect by any means. He was, whatever. But, to even refuse the process to go forward.
Right.
Like, how can you be that obstructionist?
Well, because we are not an open democracy. We are being run by the elites who don't know and care about us. Oh, that's France. Oh, I'm sorry. I got the two countries mixed up. There's that guy. What's his premise?
Porterfield.
Porterfield? That's Porterfield?
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's scary. Sorry.
Boy, guys like that worry me. I see somebody like that, man.
Comparing the gay community to the KKK.
To the gay KKK. What's the difference? What's the similarities between the gay community and the KKK?
With their antics of hate. The LGBT is the most socialist group in this country. They do not protect gays. There are many gays they persecute if they do not line up with their social ideology. I don't even know where to start.
You know what the most socialist group is in the United States? It's the United States Army. It's the armed forces.
I thought you were going to say corporate America.
No, they're socialists when it comes to on where we give them money and subsidies and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But they're not socialists when it comes to splitting the profits. But the Army, what is the Army? I mean, you got your medical in there, don't you? Mm-hmm. And you got your pension, you got all your social stuff in there.
You got good stuff.
All that good stuff.
Except the imperialism and all, but,
Well, you're just an enforcer of imperialism, but you're living in socialism. You're a socialist enforcing imperialism and capitalism around the world. But you're living in a socialist organization when you live in the United States Army or the United States Armed Forces.
I'm sorry, I gotta go back. They're global force for good. Let's be clear on that.
Yeah,
right.
That's why we're going to send them to Colombia.
Yeah, to spread peace and democracy.
Yeah. No.
And to Cuba.
When they talk about socialism, they don't talk about the like firefighters. They don't talk about police. They don't talk about, of course, they don't talk about the Army and the Navy. They don't even talk about Congress, quite frankly. I resent that I pay for the medical care of all those people in Congress who don't want to pay for medical care for me. They're the socialists.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going in their pockets when their wife gets sick.
Yeah, but look, they achieved and worked hard all their lives.
To become socialists.
They deserve it.
Yeah, okay.
John Q. Public, Jane Q. Public, they don't deserve it.
But I resent, I really do. I absolutely resent. Those things that you get for yourself, you can extend to me. Things like health care, especially, health care. You can say that you want to go to the best hospital, have the best surgeons, get the best treatment, go to the best therapy, and get lifelong disability. and it's not even a thought. You just accept it, you just take it for granted. But if I ask for anything like that, you're going to tell me that we as a nation can't afford it, but I can afford it for you.
And we could, of course, go into the 1,000 ways in which we spend money.
I go one. 700 plus billion, trillion dollars that we spend on the military, period. One's enough.
The $1 million missiles.
Yeah, I mean, look, ladies and gentlemen, you know,
$1,000 coffee mugs.
Obama said we're going to spend $10 billion on a new missile system. I mean, on new nukes. And right now, starting Monday, new nukes started to come off the line. We walked out of this IMF treaty so we could produce these new nukes. And we're calling these nukes battlefield weapons. They're 6 times the explosive power of what happened at Hiroshima. These are not small weapons, you know. But we're calling them battlefield weapons, and they look cute.
It's how you name them. It's how you portray them.
Okay. But this is where we're going, and this is what we're spending money on. We're spending money on the most destructive force in the world, and we're doing it without batting an eyelash. I have had no senator speak to me or speak to America or speak to anyone on behalf of nuclear free. Maybe Ron Paul.
Amidst his other issues.
Yeah. You know. But I don't hear anybody in Congress. I don't hear any of the churches. The churches that are supposed to be the moral voice, the moral authority of America, because we are, after all, a Christian nation. Mm-hmm. I have not heard one church, one Billy Graham type, one of those people stand up and say, it is immoral to threaten the world with an arms race, and especially an arms race that involves new nuclear weapons.
And also just the idea that they're trying to just remove the stigma of nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And just make them seem like they're any other weapon.
Yeah.
Whereas we know for an absolute fact that they leave remains and remnants of their radioactivity for hundreds of thousands of years after they're used.
We all know they're cruel. I mean, please, we brag to the world when we dropped the mother of all bombs. Remember that one? The bomb it was so big and powerful it had to go down on parachutes. Remember that one? We dropped it in where? Syria or Yemen? Where did we drop that bomb? Syria.
I forget offhand.
Yeah, well, we bombed in so many places, it's hard to keep track. You know. But we are boastful. We got the mother of all bombs. We are boastful that we have all these atomic weapons. We are boastful. We are prideful. And the church is silent. And the senators are silent. And all those people who speak this humanitarian gobbledygook, they're all silent. We're walking away from treaties that control these weapons, and they're all silent. And these people who complain about President Trump, they don't say anything about putting the weapons in his hands. These people who complain about President Trump applaud him when he threatens to use them. Even in the State of the Union. And one thing that got me during the State of the Union is every time, if you want to get those people on to automatically stand up and applaud, all you got to do is say, America is great.
No one ever wants to just stop and take a moral inventory and just say, maybe we're not always great. Even the allowance of that tiniest thread of
maybe
self-reflection is just vehemently just stopped. And your opponent will use it against you and you will not get reelected. You're un-American, you're a commie, you're a red, whatever you want to call it.
We're in big trouble, you know.
Yeah.
And not only are we in big trouble, but the fact of the matter is that we influence so much of the world. Not so much as we think, but so much of those with the power in the world. We keep telling people lies like, everybody in the world is against what's happening in Venezuela. Excuse me. There's 20 countries. There's 190 in the world.